Okay, just a quick test, see if you guys can hear me. Yep, so there we go. And here we are, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us, and welcome to round 18 of the assist tier 1 tier of the IIRL Racing League. And as with the no assist tier race on Tuesday, we find ourselves back down under in Australia. We are at Albert Park, which is the only other venue that can host the Australian Grand Prix. So we didn't quite get to race in since COVID unfortunately struck. We haven't been in real life there since 2019, but that's why it's good to have the games, because we are back in Australia in virtually, at least, in Albert Park, which is always a favourite with the drivers. Always a favourite, even though it's a very, very hard track to overtake on. And next time in the real life, we will be getting a very, very different Albert Park for us all to witness, and hopefully that will produce some much closer racing. So if you just joined us in the chat, do let us know who you are. It would be obviously great to see as many of you guys on board with the channel, and for those of you as well, I want to say thank you to everyone who's followed to take IIRL up to above 200 followers on Twitch. That's been an absolutely brilliant achievement. I think I have to say thank you to all the streamers out there, RA, SongGod, TD, anyone who's done it in the past. You've been absolutely brilliant, so thank you all so much. But now this is where the serious stuff begins, because it's 81 now, and we are in Melbourne, and returning after a few races off is FRA John B in the Alpine, who is now going to be partnered with SLR Connor for this race. And for those of you who have seen the 81 streams before, so SLR Connor has been a very, very fast driver, and it's only right in the sense that he gets partnered up with someone like John B, who is also a very, very fast driver himself. Padge saying thunderstorms happening in the race, so the qualifying is going to be probably even more crucial for all the drivers to see what's happening up there. So we are on board with Ripley, who has just come out to start his outlap in the Aston Martin. So I think there's a bit of a glitch on the camera. It's not letting me go to broadcast for some reason, but yeah, there we go. Just got that sorted out. So here we have Ripley in the Aston Martin, who we know is quite a solid driver when it comes to qualifying. Now, obviously, in terms of race pace, there's obviously quite a bit to go, but still, very, very fun driver to watch. And as we come now down to section 2, as he comes to warm up his tyres, as you see, I think both of the Hasses are actually out in front of him. So we're going to go on board with who's first, which is Platty for this one. So Platty in the Haas coming out to start his first run. Fun fact for you, obviously last time Haas were in Australia in real life, they were sponsored by the now infamous brand of Rich Energy. So for those of you who might have watched Josh Revel's video on it, or any kind of YouTube video on Rich Energy, you just know how much of a madhouse that absolutely was. So here we are now. We're going to follow on board with Platty as he starts his first qualifying lap, the first qualifying lap of this particular round, as the Sun God stays out of the way and the AlphaTauri goes down to 5th, over to 4th, trying to counter a little bit of understeer there. Our race, how are you? Great to see you again, as always, mate, and well done on the stream last week. You absolutely knocked it out at the park. I just wish, obviously, I stayed in the race long enough to give you a little bit more to talk about. But with Platty, we're going to stay on board with him as he comes round to the end of the first sector. So we're probably looking at about a 27-28 so far. So 27-1 for a first sector. So that is relatively quite fast. I think we're expecting to see fast times maybe in the 1 minute 21s. Maybe some of them may even get to the 1 minute 20s. With SLR Connor and John B, anything can happen certainly here. Remind you, Platty, Millsy, Ripley as well. Even the Bullet are also very, very fast drivers on a single pace run. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they can do. As the Haas goes a 49.4 for the second sector. It's coming now down to the final sector here, where he's going quite inside a little bit, almost a little bit of lag there from his car. Drops down to 4th and takes plenty of curb in that. I'm very surprised that he got away with that, because that could have been a very, very quickly way to invalidate your lap time. But it's quite just make sure you don't overdo it on the throttle in this corner, as Platty comes now down to the start finish straight. And what is the benchmark time for this session? It's a 1 minute 22.222. You couldn't get enough twos in that time if you tried. Ryan goes second with a 1:22.3. Thankfully, there's not many twos in there for that one. And yellows, as all the drivers try to stay out of each other's way. We're going to go on board with Ripley, who now takes the fastest slot with a 22.1. I believe Sun God is out behind him off to start his lap. We've also got Millsy, Price the Bees, and Deflated Wee on a time. So let's go on board with the McLaren, who right now is up on Platty for sure. Let's see what kind of sector he has. But he's actually invalidated his time, so he's not going to be going any further. We'll have to do another run to make sure that he gets the time fully on the board. A deflated Wee comes about in the Ferrari. And he goes to the top time now with a 21.9. Who is behind him? We've got Platty and Ryan, who I don't think Platty's going to be setting a... No, yes, that's right. He's coming into the pits. I imagine he probably would, given the fact that he's done a fast run. What is Price the Bees going to do in the Red Bull? Wasn't the best exit out there, so you won't see this going to the top of the timing sheets. In fact, it's a 23.3, so the Red Bull kind of on the back foot after that first run. Let's see who else is out on a wrap time. We've got Commence, who is in the Mercedes this time round, coming on for a lap. Sun God goes 5th fastest with a 22.5, so that's a very strong effort from him, so well done. Running the number 26, which belonged to the infamous Danny Kvyat, who, funny enough, raced at AlphaTauri last year for... I'm sure you guys will remember that as well, as Price the Beast has spun himself there in the Red Bull. Got plenty of drivers on an outlap. I think the McLaren of Millsy, yes, he's done 49.2 and he's kept his time firmly, kept the car firmly on the black stuff, and he goes second with that time. Iros J is starting his lap. Prevenel. Let's stay on board with him then in the Alpine. No, sorry, in the Alfa Romeo. I mean, the amount of cars, the amount of teams this year that start with the letter A, it is so damn confusing to commentate on. It was a very nice and tidy line out of that little chicane. And I think that's the problem with this circuit. There's almost too many chicanes that makes it very hard for cars to follow, because all you have to do is just activate your IIRLs and then you can just pull away from your competition as they're getting ruined by all the dirty air. And hopefully the new regulations and the track changes for 2022 should put an end to that when we travel back to Australia. Hopefully COVID won't put a stop to that. As Prev comes round to finish his lap, Arjak, thank you so much for the follow. That takes us up to, I believe, 204. Thank you all very, very much for following. As the Alfa Romeo comes across the start-finish straight, I don't suspect this is going to be top. It's not going to top the timing sheets. However, it is a 22.6, which is not too far off a Sun God. So, while not the fastest time, he's still very, very much in the hunt. As Iros J actually goes 6th with his time, so a 4,000ths faster than Commence. TMA goes 9th in the Ferrari. What's happening so far with the Alpine? You have John B coming around to set a time on the softs. Estelar Connor will probably need to set another time himself on there. So John B's obviously he hasn't quite been racing for a while, so I wouldn't expect him there to top the timesheet. So unless he's made a major mistake, as Estelar Connor will surely, unless he's on a quick time to get out of the way. John B hasn't activated the DRS, so this isn't going to be a hot lap for him. He's going to probably to cool it off for a little bit and probably go again, or he's probably going to end up coming back to the pits to probably put on a fresh set of tyres as Sun God improves to P2. And I have to say, very nice improvement there from the AlphaTauri. Prevenel is 800 up on his time, but is he going to take that any further? Well, he's 800s faster than before, so it's an improvement to his time, puts him above the Ferrari, but doesn't take him any further than that. As Connor gets out of the way, the Bullet is still yet to set a time, and so is AMS Fairley. And it looks like Bullet is backed off, so we're not going to see too fast a time from him. As Fairley does a 49.1, this could be a very competitive time from him. Millsy, his teammate, is currently in P3 with a 22 flat, and his teammate goes fastest with a 21.8, and that puts the McLaren provisionally into pole position. But this isn't where the pole position is decided. This just decides who in the bottom positions will be leaving qualifying. As Kement comes into the pits, he's invalidated his time. The other Mercedes of APS Greg is coming to start his time. So let's go on board with the Mercedes and see what happens. We're here. Drops down to 4th for the first corner. You always have to fight understeer there. Then turn 2, you upshift quickly to 5th to make sure you counteract any wheel spin or whatever that you may get off the corner. Down to 2nd for turn 3. Then you have to kind of keep it very gentle when here. And then unfortunately a bit of understeer there from the Mercedes, which would have caught him out somewhat. As that comes to the end of the first sector, 27.4. So it's a little bit behind what Platty done. So far you're probably looking at about a 22.5 if you matches Platty's time throughout the rest of the lap. It goes down into 3rd gear for the next chicane, which is coming up to the fast sweeping left and then the right-hander and into the what was effectively the 2nd DRS zone theoretically on the track, as he drops down to 6th, keeps the throttle in it, and that's a very tricky corner to get right. Even on time trial, it's very easy to lose the back end off of there, but the Mercedes has kept it planted, has kept it absolutely where it needs to be. Drops down to 3rd for the right-hander, and then the second-hander drops down to 5th, and then comes down to the tight left-hander, to penultimate corner, and then from here onto the right-hander. You've got to be so careful with the throttle and try not to lose it off the back end. And there you go, DRS open. And what is APS Greg doing for a time? He comes across the line, and unfortunately it is a 23.4, which puts him, however, just behind Price the Bees, as FRA John B has retired. The Alpine has retired from the session. It looks like he's crashed out. I'm looking on this place on the timing tracker, on the car tracker rather, it doesn't look like he's actually going. Yes, he has crashed out, which essentially means all Padge and Bullet need to do is set a time faster than that, which I imagine is certainly possible. And there we have John B is out of qualifying. But now Padge is also crashed out as well. I've just seen it on the names. His name became dimmed somewhat, so we're going to see if we can find him on board. Fairley has retired from the session, so we're not going to see any more times from him. TMA 24 is also out in the Ferrari. If we stay on board with him, maybe see it on board, maybe we can spot Padge to see where he's gone out. There he is, yes! Did you see from your screens? We saw Padge just crashed out from the side of the corner there. Unfortunately, that's going to help John B to some degree, because Padge hasn't actually set a time, so I don't think John B's going to be losing any position to Padge, relatively speaking. But SLR Connor and the Bullet need to get a time on the board and try not to obviously crash, because if they do, that means they're going to be out of qualifying for sure. Let's go on board with the Aston. Wasn't the best exit out of the corner, and that will lose him a little bit of time throughout the straight. Let's see how he handles the first corner. Drops down to 4th. Doesn't look like there was any understeer there. It was quite a nice tidy line. Opens up the DRS again. Comes down to the right-hander at turn 3. Drops down to 2nd. Gets the amount of turning that he needs. And down to 3rd for the next corner. It's a very twisty part of this track. And it's something that you've got to get right. But he loses the back end almost somewhat. And that was a very, very tight exit there. 27.0 though for a first sector time. So I have to say that was very, very well driven. All consider that he lost the back end. It probably would have cost him a tenth or two. But Bullet is on for a very, very good lap. Goes a little bit wide. But yes, he's lost the back end again. But he's got to keep his foot in it, because he hasn't got that much time left in this sector. But he's upshifted early, I think, to 8th. And yeah, I think he may have backed out with this one. Yes, I think he has backed out because he'll have to... That losing the back end there just really cost him some time. As we're going to go on board with the other Alpine of SLR Connor, running the number 2, belonging to Stoffel Van Dorn. I believe John B also ran 8 as well, that belonged to Romain Grosjean. As SLR Connor does a 26.9, that is a very, very good first sector, which I think is actually purple at the moment. I don't think we've seen anyone faster as of yet. As it drops down to third. Upshifts very early to 4. Takes the straightest line possible. I have to say that exit of the corner was very well taken. Let's see what happens with the second sector. How hot he is up on his time. 6/10 up. Now this was a very slow sector for SR Connor if you remember. Because he looks like he must have backed out of that previous sector to do a time of 1 minute 30. So dropping down to 4th gear. That was very well taken. Down to 5th. Up to 6th, but he keeps it on the corner and manages not to invalidate his time. That's a very tight line through that tight left-hander, so he upshifts very, very early to 3rd to counter any wheel spin. And looking at what SLR Connor is doing, this is a brilliant time. It looks like it's going to be across the board, and it's a 21.7, so just ahead of Fairley, and that should see the Alpine comfortably through into Q2. As the Bullet has come into the pits, it's not looking good for him because he's got to get back out there pretty quickly to make sure that he doesn't drop out qualifying. And he's going to be up against it with the Ferrari of TMA and the Mercedes of Greg. Price to Bees is also... There's nothing much he can do actually because he thinks he crashed out himself. 2 McLarens have retired from in the pit lane. So it looks like, yeah, Bullet is going right back out again, and I think he should be able to do it. Yep, he's back out, and yeah, she should easily get a lap in with where he is on the track. Greg is also out in time, and no, I don't think, no, he's coming into the pits. He looks like he's out of fuel. And from there, that is qualifying over for Greg, and qualifying over certainly for the Ferrari. The Bullet on his out lap, I think he's the one to watch now. Because whatever happens, he's the only one who could really make any lasting impact. Because the Ferrari and the Mercedes are both in the pit lane, which means they're not going to have enough time to set another lap. It's now, especially now that it's gone to 1 minute 10 remaining in the session, it's only the Aston now who looks like he can set a competitive time. So going to Bullet, running the number 12 on his car. That belonged to, I believe it was, yes, Felipe Nasser. I know I say that pretty much every stream. Yellows in sector 1 and 3 as everyone tries to stay out of each other's way. The Aston Martin goes down to 5th gear, keeps it in 5th, so that's pretty confident to keep it there in a higher gear. But obviously he must have had enough speed and everything to go through with it. So drops down to 3rd gear, gets a bit of understeer there, and goes off to the back curb. Down to 3rd for the left-hander. Upshifts quick to 5th, to 4th, to 6th. And then upwards to 7th now for the next corner. What is Bullet going to do for a first sector time? It's a 27.1. So that's still fairly competitive. That should be enough to get him through. And TMA is obviously out and out lap, but I can't imagine he's going to be able to get around and actually do the lap in time. No, he's not. You can see he's right in front of us. And 3, 2, 1, and the Ferrari is not going anywhere. Even drops down to 5th, so it's quite low gears. And they both stay out of the way. So it's a sensible drive from both the Alfa Romeo and the Ferrari. Drops down to 6th, up to 6th, and now to 5th for the next right-hander. Drops down to, let's see, it's got to be 2nd gear for that tight left-hander. It's so tricky to get right, especially when you're trying to overtake another car, as you'll see from many races in the past in real life in Formula 1. But this is the game, it's a different animal. And Bullock does a 22.2, which does see him through to the end. So we have 18 cars, and if I'm sorry, I think it's only 4 that go out. So we have TMA in the Ferrari, Greg, FRI John B, and IIRL Padge, who unfortunately, having not set a time, will start at the back. Gotta say, I gotta give a mention to Mr. Wiggles for this time. It's a 21.8, so that gets him to second place for now. That's a very, very fast time from him. But I have to say, in between 13th, between 1st and 14th, only covered by about 0.8 of a second. This is a very competitive qualifying session at IIRL 81. So we have the end of the first session. Let's see what's happening here. So we have Greg is out, FRA John B is out, and Padge is out as well. Price to B, since he crashed out, will not be taking any further part, so that demotes him by default to 15th position. TMA now, I think he may have just been saved by the bell on that one, should be able to put in more competitive time this time around. But look at that, only a second. So only just over 0.8 of a second separates those who got through into Q1. This could be a very, very competitive session indeed. And here we are, guys. We are now back for Q2 of the Australian Grand Prix, and this is the one. This is the important one that counts, because if you go through into Q3, for those new to the stream, if you go through to Q3, you start the race on the tyre you used in this session to set your best time. And looking at what people are on, so we have the Sun God is going out on, he's out on mediums. We have SLR Connor out on softs. We have Prevenel out on softs. TMA out on mediums. So there's definitely some variations in the tyre strategy here, and that could translate into all sorts for the race. I believe Sun God was the first out. So we're going to go on board with him. He's out on medium tyres. It's a very interesting tyre choice. He must be feeling quite confident for what he wants to do. But obviously he would have his time's invalidated, but that's kind of doesn't really mean anything, because he's got this is the lap that's going to count, as long as he keeps it on the right stuff. And now let's go on board with Sun God. First runner out on medium compound tyres, so let's see how much pace he's got, and let's see what he can extract out of that AlphaTauri. Drops down to 5th, but oh no, but he's run wide. Unfortunately, he's spun the car, and that is the end of what could have been, unfortunately, for Sun God. So that we are now going to switch to the Alfa Romeo of Prevenel, as drops down to turn 3. With the softs, you have more likelihood to get through, but that does compromise your race strategy, especially with things like safety cars, which are quite frequent on this track. Yes, it was commentator's curse indeed. So Sun God, if you are watching this, or if you watch this stream back, I am so sorry. .49.1 for Prevenel, so this is looking quite a fast time. Very reminiscent of what we saw in the previous qualifying session. Drops down the order, but he goes wide, and that will surely cost him time. It means his time will be kept. He's not going to go any farther there. But as you see, yellows in sector 2, which I believe may have been for Sun God yet again, which is a shame for him, because he looks like he was on quite a strong lap. As Prevanel comes across the line, it's a 22 flat to set off the first set of times for this qualifying session. SLR Connor does a 23 flat, Commence does a 21.8, TMA is a 23.7, so that's not a good session for him at all. It doesn't look like he's going to get one through as well, because he hasn't got that much fuel left. But with that, that's not going to do his tyres any good as well, because he'll have to do another warm-up lap to get his tyres in a good nick. Who is next to come across the line? So let's go on board with them. So it looks like everyone's going to be coming in. Ryan's coming to the pits. Platty's on his outlap. The Bullet stays out of his teammate's way, thankfully. I heard where there could have been a bit of an issue there between teammates, but still, that's quite nice, at least courtesy from each other, just to make sure that they don't impede each other. So, Ripley comes across the final corner. Let's see what time he can put it on the board. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that competitive. It's a 23 flat. As Platty comes around to start his lap, we have a McLaren behind, which is AMS Fairley, to set his time. Who else is out? Looks like it's SLR Connor, who's coming into the pits. Oh, it looks like I was wrong about Price of Bees. I thought he crashed out, but it looks like he didn't. So, if he's watching, then I do apologise for that, viewers. But the Red Bull will certainly have a chance now to get through. I thought he may have crashed out because it was quite low down the field, so I can't imagine he would have retired willingly. And Deflated Wee, looks like in the game, has got himself a drive penalty for a 5-place grid penalty for illegal blocking. So I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe he was, I don't know who was blocking there, but Fairley has invalidated his time. As you see, he went wide at that point there, so that has invalidated his time. Not good news for the McLaren, who's currently 14th and yet to get a time on the board. 27.4. 27.4 for IIRL J in the Alfa Romeo. .49.7. This doesn't look particularly fast. It doesn't look like the track is actually evolving as much as one would think. But IIRL J comes down to the last sector, and everyone looks to be staying out of their way. Takes plenty of curb. Wiggles gets out of the way. The Alfa Romeo taking plenty of curb. It drops down to the tight left-hander, all the way down into second gear. But with this final corner, you have to be so careful with the throttle, and he is. And it looks like it was a very smooth exit there from IIRL J. He comes across the line. It's a 23 flat. So those on the medium tyre, there really is quite a pace deficit there, it has to be said. I think to get through on mediums has got to be a very quick lap. But those on the soft tyre probably will be compromised by this race. But this isn't the worst track in the world for eating your tyres. 49.9 for Platty. That's not the fastest time, it has to be said. And that was a very wide corner that he took. That will surely lose even more time for him. It's not going to top the timesheets, but hopefully it could be above the 23s. And yes, it's a 22.7. But I have a feeling that a lot of people on the mediums are going to be thinking about softs if they want to get through. Safety cars could change everything. But naturally, you want to be as far up the grid as you could possibly be. It's 49.4 for Ryan, so he's up on his teammate. It could be good for a third place here. I'll say the gap in between them is quite something, it has to be said. But Ryan has invalidated his time now, so he's not going to be getting any further up. The Bullet is backing out, and Sun God after that mistake on the medium compound tyres. Just back out now on the softs. Who's the next one out on the timing sheet? So it looks like it's AMS Fairley. He's the 10th up, but he's coming into the pits. I don't think this really isn't working out well for people on the mediums. That's a 26.8 for Lester Connor in the first sector. I think we'll just stay on board with him before we go back to the Sun God, who is still on his outlap. Oh, but he spun it! Look at that! SLR Connor has spun the Alpine and has crashed out of the session. Remarkable stuff. So both Alpines out. And that really opens things up for this race. Ryan is now back on a more competitive time. He's still got a lap time valid as of yet. Goes down to, even keeps it in third for that corner. So it's always interesting to see what kind of gears everyone's taking in there. It's absolutely bingo on fuel though. Is the Haas going to be able to set a good time? Yes, he is. It's good enough for third. And once more, Sun God is backed out. It's just not going his way at all. Pressure's on now for Sun God. The Bullet as well. And the two Ferraris both out. AMS Fairley is coming on an outlap actually on a soft compound tyre, so clearly the mediums aren't working for him. And I have to say, Millsy, Price of Bees and Platty could be under threat by their own cautious strategy, because given the times that we saw in Q1, those on the soft tyres, I mean, they could easily match it. I mean, the gap between first and fifth is about a second. As you see, the wheels still remain there from SLR Connor. As long as the Alpines play it cool, they should be able to make their way back up through the field, as we've so often seen. Now let's go on board with the McLaren. It's do or die time for Fairley, because with the Alpines out, this should blow the race wide open indeed, because he, alongside his teammate Millsy, are certainly some of the faster drivers for sure. Now, that's a very lovely first couple of corners there for AMS Fairley. It goes down to turn 3. Keeps the brakes on, and I think the tiniest bit of understeer, but it looks like he's made everything work. He's just up now, up to 5th and then to 6th. Keeps the floor, like, lifts a little bit, but as long as that keeps him on the top, that's what he needs to do. And it's a 26.9 for a first sector. That's very, very well. Not a little bit far for what SLR Connor is. Ripley has got to get out of the way. Thankfully, he does. Hopefully, they wouldn't have taken too much time out of AMS Fairley's lap, as the Haas around him gets out of the way quite sensibly, it has to be said. Ripley, I have to say, was a little bit late. But what can Fairley do? He's 5/10 up on his time. This is certainly looking good, and as long as he can keep the pace planted, he should easily be able to get through into the top 10. Oh, but he's invalidated his time. He's taken way too much curb there, and Fairley is up against it yet again. With 2 minutes to go, he's got to go for it now. I say to stay on board with him, because he was doing so well in that third sector, and unfortunately, I think it could be what our race is saying. This could be commentator's curse, but I don't know. I'm not going to blame myself too much for that one. Nah, I'm not going to. It wasn't my fault. Ripley is on an outlap. He's just come across to start it. TMA has just started his lap in the Ferrari. Deflated Wee is on his outlap. Bullet as well is on his outlap. It's a 27 flat for Fairley for the first sector, so a 10th down on what he did. But still, he still has a chance to get through. And I think Millsy knows it as well. So does Price the Bees and Platty. They're all out on the sector. As you can see, Millsy sensibly stays out of his teammate's way, because Fairley is up against it. He's 7/10 up on his time, so this is certainly much improved. But he's got to be sensible. It's certainly a hard one on track limits. I concur for sure. Commence retired from the qualifying session, as there you go, much more of a conservative entry is guaranteed in the lap, as drops down to 4th for the next corner. Now he's got to be careful here not to overshoot it or to put on too much throttle coming out of the final corner, as he goes down to 5th and upshifting quite early there to make sure he counteracts any wheel spin. MS Fairley comes down to the final lap. He does a 22 flat, so with all things considered, I think that should be just enough to get him through. And with him being up against it, that might just be all that he needs. Iros J is also a job. Ripley now goes fastest, so that inevitably pushes SLR Connor out. Song God is in the pits, so he won't be going any further, so Song God is for sure out. TMA is also invalidated his time, but he's also spun yet again, so that is curtains for the Ferrari. And let's see how the other Ferrari does. Oh, but he's lost the back end. Is that going to lose him too much time? It's currently 22.7 is the cutoff. It's a 22.3 the Ferrari does, and he is safe. Millsy does a 22.7. It says here on the timing screens that he's let's check a fact, so it should have been faster. Platty is out of the qualifying session. And what can the Bullet do? I think he's the last one out there on a competitive time. But can the Aston get through? Price the Bees looks like he's going to be knocked out of the qualifying session, and he is knocked out. So there we have it, guys. Everybody in the top 10 will be starting on the soft compound tyre. The deficit between the two, which is too big to pull off a conservative strategy. So there we have it, folks. That is the order. So that's the order for Q2. So what happened? We've had Price the Bees is out. Platty is out as well behind him in 12th. The Sun God is in P13. SLR Connor, having crashed out, is starting the race in 14th, and TMA 24, unfortunately, will be P15 in the Ferrari. So this is the second, covers the top 10. So the top 10 certainly feeling the pressure to get through. So I'll just run through those who have been knocked out. So we have Price the Bees in 11th in the Red Bull, Platty in P12th in the Haas, Sun God P13 in the Alpha Tauri, SLR Connor crashed out in P14 in the Alpine, and TMA, unfortunately losing the back end and invalidating his time, will go P15 in the Ferrari. Actually, no, Millsy is going to be starting on the medium compound tyre, so it doesn't look like he actually set his fastest time on the softs. Very, very close risk, and it looks like it's paid off. So there we have it, guys. It is Q3 time with everybody through, apart from Millsy starting on the medium tyre, everybody's going to be starting on softs, which just shows how much the deficit is between the soft and the medium, and just shows just how close everybody actually is. So I have to say, we are certainly going to be treated to a very interesting qualifying session indeed, and even better race, it will seem. Prevanel is the first one to set. Is going to be the first one, it seems, to set a time in the Alfa Romeo. So those watching in the stream, let us know how you're doing and what you're thinking of the session so far. So Prev will be the first lap in Q3. This is the benchmark time. Okay, so Prevanel has started his lap in the Alfa Romeo as he goes down to the first corner, keeps it in 5th, and keeps it all within track limits. So that's a very well taken corner there. Goes up to 8th gear and then up and down to third for the third corner rather. God, I can't get my words right here. Up now into 4th for the left-hander, then upwards to 5th to 6th, and then for the turn, I think that's turn 5. Yes, it is turn 5. That's the end of the first sector. It's 27 flats, so it's not the fastest that we've ever seen. However, it is still quite fast nonetheless, and should be good for a low 1 minute 22 as it stands right now. So we're going to go on board. Quite a conservative corner that he's taken there. He's not too greedy with the throttle, so that should be, all things considered, it's a fairly tidy lap. Takes plenty of curb through that left-hander, the right-hander working out well for him as well. This is a very tidy lap so far from Prevanel. I don't think it's going to be the fastest that we've ever seen, but it's certainly going to be the tidiest. But as I say that, it goes a little bit wide. He loses time, so it doesn't invalidate his lap time. But that would not have helped him at all. That would have taken away about a 10th or 2 from going that wide. So he comes across to the back straight now to finish his lap time. And what is the benchmark time going to be for this qualifying session? It's a 22.3. But immediately Ryan beats that with a 22.1. The next Alfa Romeo comes across the line, and Jay goes second with that time. Deflated goes in to the pits. Fairley is the next one across the line. Now this is one who I highly suspect should be setting the times alight, because he's been given a gold opportunity to win. And there we have it. It's a 21.7 for the McLaren. Commenced also well, doing a very strong session, it has to be said. Certainly improving from what he was earlier on in the tier. Millsy now goes fastest with a 21.6. So it's a McLaren 1-2. I feel quite nostalgic saying that. Ripley is the next car. He's currently on an outlap. Commence also in the Mercedes. Doesn't look like he's going any further. It's like he's getting out of the way. But no, he's not going to be setting a time. Or not a competitive one, at least. But a wide line there for Millsy. Has to lift off a little bit. 26.9 for a first sector, so that's a little bit faster than what Prevanel was able to manage. But that lap time for Millsy, 21.6, is certainly an incredible time. Okay, so our race is tipping Ross for a for race pace. With that, it's very interesting, because the higher he can get out of the grid, if his race pace is that dominating, then it could be in for a massive shout of winning this Grand Prix. It all depends what happens with the Alpines. It's certainly always exciting when they come up. And oh, it looks like Ripley has invalidated his time, so will not be continuing with his lap. As Mr. Wiggles as well crashes out. We're on board with the AlphaTauri, and unfortunately he will start about as high as 10th place, unfortunately. That's a massive shame for the AlphaTauri, who crashes out of qualifying. It certainly makes me glad that there's no bronze failure. And look at the time that Millsy has set. A 21.3. Yes, you are seeing that Millsy 502 has set a 21.3. Truly an outstanding time in the McLaren. That will surely get him through to pole position. What does Fairley do? 48.9, which is about 5 thousandths down. But where did Millsy find all of that time? Unbelievable lap. So both McLarens will surely be coming in. This is where the dust settles somewhat. Looks like the Bullet is the next one on his outlap. Let's go back on board with him. He was certainly up against it last time in Q2. And while you're not going to be eliminated, he's got to get very, very far up the grid. Let's see what he can do. You can see the wheels almost touching the grass just before he turned into the corner. So using every bit of track that he can get away with. Drops down to second for turn 3. But a little bit of understeer there. Lifts off a little bit. Let's see what he does for first sectors. There's 26.9. So again before, like not the fastest that we've ever seen, but certainly not the slowest. Down to turn 3. .49 flat. So it's getting quite close to what Fairley did. As long as he's sensible, he should just pop this in to probably about 4th place. As long as he's taken this time well, it could even be 3rd right now. But it's taking plenty of curve, but he's gone wide, and that's not going to do him any favours at all. With dust and grass all over his tyres, he's backed out and gone back into the pits. And that was a shame, because that was looking like a very competitive time for the Aston Martin. And speaking of Aston Martins, let's follow the other one, shall we? We are on board with Ripley SPL in the second Aston Martin. Hopefully this one can get his time on the board, because neither of the Astons have got a time on the board. It's 27.1 for a first sector. Certainly not the fastest that we've seen. .49.2. It's about 3/10 off, I think, what Fairley did for his time. So not particularly strong. The Mercedes, I've noticed as well, is also out on an outlap with nearly 3 minutes to go for the end of this session. It looks much tidier. He has to correct himself with the steering. This isn't going to be the fastest one, but he comes across the line, but it's only good. It's actually good for P3, so this is still a strong time nonetheless, so I do take that back. But what was Millsy saving in his tyres? Prevanel is actually down on his best. Certainly can't afford to be. So far he sits at 6th, but we have 3 cars who haven't yet set a competitive time. Prevanel improves to P5. just edging out his teammate, who's also starting his lap, who in the McLarens is out on the time. So we have Fairley, who's the 10th up so far on his best. He's 4/10ths behind his teammate, but is he going to make it work? And I think Millsy may have backed out of his run. Oh, and just like that, 0.02 of a second, Fairley goes to pole position. So, just with that, with the twinkling of an eye, just before I silly enough make an assumption, Fairley edges his teammate by 0.02 of a second. Now, it's just Deflated Wee and Commence who have also got to set a time themselves. This is their last go, so they've got to get a time in now. Oh, but he's just made it work, the Mercedes. I thought he was going to invalidate his run, but the Alfa Romeo gets out of the way, so good stuff for him. Bit of understeer there, not quite the fastest line, but there you go. All he has to do is just play it sensible. Bit of understeer there. Upshifts quite early, so he might lose a bit of traction because of it. But what can Commence do for his time? This is what's going to get him to, and it's as high as P5 at the moment, so that's not a bad effort from him at all. IIRL goes to start another lap as Prevenel improves. Millsy's down on his time, so he's not going to beat his teammate. Ryan is also down on his time, so he's not going to be going any faster. Prevenel is also losing out his time. Ripley goes into 7th place. IIRL still on a time himself, and the Bullet is backed out of his time, so he will be starting in P9. Fortunately, too many track invalidations has cost him, as the last one on a competitive lap, I believe, will be IIRL, so we're going to see out the Alfa Romeo through until the end of the session. He's a 10th up on his best. Gets a tow from his teammate. But he's invalidated his time. He's not going to get any higher up than P8. And that is a massive shame. So that effectively seals the grid. So there we have it. It's a McLaren 1-2. Deflated Wee goes 3rd in a Ferrari. So mention to him. Plenty happening in this qualifying session. Hello folks, so for those who are just joining back, thank you, and we are going to now get back underway with the race for the Australian Grand Prix. And what you're about to see is everyone coming round on their parade lap, with Runner Mark actually joining very late, so he'll be starting at the back, but everybody coming round now to start the formation lap. It's the Alpines that we want to watch out for, because they are certainly going to be the ones with some catching up to do, just as SLR Connor did in Brazil, and FRA John B, I believe, did so in Hungary. I think that was another strong session, I believe, from him. We have the two McLarens out in front, who, with the Alpines out, are certainly going to be blowing this round wide open. Their pace simply in qualifying was simply incredible, so it could be quite a dominant drive from those two, unless IIRL J or any of the other field have got something to say about it. Ryan, I have to say, it's a very strong lap from Ryan to get through into P3 in the Haas, with Prevanel P4 in the Alfa Romeo. IIRL J 7th behind his teammate, with Commence a very commendable 5th in the Mercedes. Bullet, well, after the qualifying session last time in Brazil, I thought he might have gotten a little bit higher, but 9th is still good, all things considered. Anything can happen. Deflated Wee obviously had his grid penalty, so he dropped down to 8th place as a result. So that means it just shows that obviously a 5-place penalty could be quite decisive, all things considered, as long as he doesn't run into anyone. It's with that, I'm just going to get the lap data up. We're going to turn the cabs and everything off, as Wiggles and Price, the Bees, are disqualified from the run, so they just get slotted back to the starting grid. Not quite sure how that affects their tyres, but it's a... certainly you don't want to... I mean from my perspective, whenever I do these races, I never really want to get disqualified and get sent all the way back to the grid, because it doesn't help when you've got to get used to the tyres and everything around you. As you see, everybody now coming round to take their slot on the grid. And just behind, Runner Mark just coming out to through the final slot. Now, both Alpines with a lot of work to do from 14th and 17th behind on the grid. In front, we have the two McLarens, who have a brilliant chance to make a brilliant impact in this race. All 5 lights are on. They're on for a while, but it's game on in Russia. It's a good... Australia, rather. Sorry. It's a good start for both of the McLarens, who look like they're going to go into the corner 1 and 2, and yes, they do so. So we have Fairley and Millsy going into the lead. Prev now up into P3 in the Alfa Romeo. Ryan drops down to P4. The Bullet down to P9, and Padge is also down to P17 as well. SLR Connor is still fighting with the Song God Ever. It looks like an absolute melee on the background here, but Deflated Wee falls down into 10th, and thankfully everyone looks to have gotten through very, very fairly. But with IIRL J in P6 and FRA John B unfortunately hasn't gotten any further up, and neither has his teammate SLR Connor. I imagine I expected them to make a little bit more of an impact in the start, but because they certainly need to, because the McLarens are getting underway, but not if Prev has anything to say about that. Just very hard track to very hard track to overtake on this Australian Grand Prix. And you can see, look at the lead that Fairley is building already, and IIRL J looks to have had a moment. Yes, IIRL J has spun and drops all the way to the back. And that is such a shame for the teammates. So there goes your prediction, probably, our race, in terms of who's going to be getting pole position, getting the win. It looks like he's got damage on his front wing as it comes across. Yes, he has got damage, and that, knowing what the damage model is like on this game, that will absolutely ruin the handling. So what is the Alpha going to do? Is he going to come into the pits? Yes, he does, and no surprise, the Ferrari does so as well, who also has damage. That moves the Alpines up where they need to. John B passes Greg. First overtake so far, but it looks like he's gone a little bit wide, and Greg has retaken him. So a lot of work to do for the Alpines to get far ahead. I have to say, John B has been out somewhat. He hasn't been around for the last couple of races, so could be a little bit race rusty, but if anyone could pull off a comeback from the back, it's certainly him. as we see the Ferrari and the Alfa coming back out of the pits, nearly half a lap down. Fairley is pulling away quite a lefty lot. And what's happened to John B? John B is spun, so this is not the strongest showing for him, and a lot more work to do for the Alpines. And let's hope that race pace of IIRL gets him back further up the field. What he really needs is a safety car, and all things considered, but still may not be all over yet. Fairly in the lead by nearly 2 seconds now from Millsy. So this is an incredibly strong showing so far from the lead McLaren driver. Grinder number 46, who, if you follow MotoGP, belonged to the Dr. Valentino Rossi before he retired. And oh, and look at Prevenel. Prevenel has damaged his front wing and spun out the back of that final corner. Now he's got to do a whole lap with all that damage on his car. DRS has been enabled, and that is that buys Millsy a little bit of time. As you can just see how bad the understeer is on that, and he's lost his front wing entirely. Oh, and the Red Bulls now crashed out. They're all dropping like flies at the moment. Price to Bees crashes out, and the VSC has been deployed. Talk about blink if you miss it. Some good news though for FRA John B. He's gone onto the hard compound tyres, and now he's been able to change his front wing. Behind you obviously got IIRL, and he looks like he's going to fall behind the Alfa Romeo. Yes, he is. He's got the Ferrari of TMA. Unfortunately, he's not going to fall behind him. So comes out P18. Still plenty to do, but there's good news in some way for Prevenel, but obviously DRS has been enabled, and the VSC has also ended as well. And there we have just see the front wing just flying underneath that Alfa Romeo, who comes across the track to get through, and that's just going to lose him even more and more time. He would have wished it was a full-on safety car. But all sorts of chaos happening up and down the field as Padge now loses his front wing. So there we have it already. Now, actually, no, it's Run Amok that loses his front wing. I apologise. So there we have. We'll see. I imagine we'll see both the Red Bull and the Alfa into the pits. And yes, that's exactly what happens. Wiggles now coming into the pits. So he must have damage himself. And yeah, could you see his front wing has taken a little bit of damage there himself. As Yellow's now in Sector 3, what's happened here? And Greg's got a puncture. Greg's got a puncture, so he's got to slow the car down. And that's another casualty, it seems. Fairley is out! I think I may have missed that, but AMS Fairley is out of the race. I can't believe I missed that. I'm sorry, viewers. We're going to stay on board with the AlphaTauri, and commiserations to Fairley, who I have to say was driving an absolutely superlative session. Now Platty's retired from this session. I'm not going to have any vocal cords left by the end of this. The VSC has been deployed yet again. So the first McLaren, who was meant to be the pace setter, was doing such a good job in controlling the pace, has crashed out of this Grand Prix. I think Wiggles has also got a time penalty. Let's see who's on what tyre. Yeah, Wiggles has got a time penalty. I should have had that out earlier, viewers. I apologise. Commence goes onto the hards. I don't know, it looks like it might have been showing a penalty, or might have just been lag, I'm not entirely sure. But Padge is now up into P8. SLR Connor, after all the chaos that's happening in front of him, starting on the medium tyre, now up into 7th position. So that's turning out very, very well for him. Crazy stuff, certainly, our race. It's very hard for me to keep track of everything, and frankly, it's very, very hard for me to keep my voice. Virtual safety car out. Oh, and Run Amok now has got a drive-through penalty for speeding on the VSC, so though his lap time would have been under the delta. But now Ryan, Ripley, Bullet, Deflated Wee in the Ferraris, the one with DRS opening at the moment. Let's see how we can... Let's see if he can follow the car up in front, and let's see if that can make... if that can make a real impact in terms of overtaking in this race. I imagine as soon as you get the overtake activated, yellow's in sector 1, because I believe it's TMA24 that's had a spin. But let's stay on board though with the other Ferrari of Deflated Wee, and let's see if they can make some kind of impact. If he stays with him quite closely through this sector, yellow's again in sector 1, and it looks like, yes, it's Ripley that spun behind them. And now there's the Sun God as well as spun behind him. There's all sorts happening this race. Has he got damage on his front wing? I think he has. Yes, as you can see just by the left hand of his front wing, there you can see he has gotten damage and overshoots the corner quite dramatically. Let's go on back to at least to fight for the lead, so that might be somewhat calm. As Deflated Wee actually, fights up against Bullet and has overtaken him. But Bullet's the one with DRS coming into the next corner. Is he going to attempt to move? No, he's not. So hard for me to know where to look in this one. And Padge goes through ahead of Ripley to take 6th. SLR Connor is 5 seconds back from these two, but it should all come to him as long as he could make those tyres last. What can the Aston do about the Ferrari? I don't think it's going to be here that we're going to get a pass, but it could very well be at the end of the second DRS zone. He gets within 2/10, but as long as he stays with him and doesn't overshoot it, this could be a chance for the Aston to overtake it. Oh, and Deflated Wee has crashed out. That's another retirement from this Grand Prix as the Ferrari crashes out, and that has brought out the safety car. Time penalty for John B, but the safety car... Insane stuff. Hit the wall at 40 and wall comes off. These things happen fairly, so I'm sorry the race didn't quite go as well as you did, but you were driving really well and you had some unbelievable pace. But so obviously just keep your chin up, and hopefully next time round the race will be going a little bit better for you. So sorry your race didn't go as well as it did. You were really, really strong pace today, mate. So you see, with the safety car coming up, that's going to help John B for sure. But with everybody else, I think those on the soft tyres will probably be more than likely to pit. Go onto hards and probably get through to the end of the race. What will those on the medium tyres do? It's half distance. So what is Milty going to do? He's coming in. Ryan's coming in as well. So the leaders into the pits for their first stops. But what tyres are they going to put on? Milty comes in and he puts on the softs. So he's certainly going to be two-stopping. As the Ferrari comes out ahead of Ryan, who goes onto the hard, so that should be his only stop, barring any more safety cars. I tell you what, for those of you a few more people joining the stream, thank you very much for joining first of all, but let us know what you're thinking of this crazy old race. As Deflated Wee actually retires. Oh wait, Deflated Wee actually retired earlier. I apologise. Oh, sorry, I meant half distance overall in real life Formula 1. I mean, it's we're currently in lap 7 now, but it's a half distance race compared to actual Formula 1, so that's just what I meant there. So, should have clarified that a little bit earlier. But that, funny enough, puts SLR Connor into the lead of this race. So, I imagine he's got to be one-stopping. Mr. Wiggles has gotten a drive-through penalty for speeding under the safety car. All the leaders starting to close up now. We have Commence behind him. The next one behind him is IIRL Padge, who's starting from the back, certainly looking quite pretty. So my dad is Martin. How are you doing? I think I might just call you Martin, just so it's a bit easier for me to pronounce. But how are you doing? Thank you for joining the stream. How are you finding this absolutely bonkers race? Yep, usually the safety cars tend to last about 3 laps, so it may very well take a while, but hopefully they can all catch up quite quick. So there we go, Padge is caught up. Prevenel shouldn't be too far off himself. Now I imagine, given how slow the safety car is in the 3rd sector, don't suspect to probably the end of next lap before the back of the field finally catches up. With John B on hards. Could he make it to the end? I mean, the safety car is certainly going to be helping him. Going to give you a sui indeed. We don't like old tyres. Old tyres are mental though. As soon as they get to about 30 or 40%, then you kind of almost had it. So, yeah, commiserations to you, Deflate. It looks like your qualifying pace, like with Feather, your qualifying pace was really, really good. So, sorry it didn't quite go as well as you wanted. Commence into the pits and run amok into the pits as well. Changes onto mediums. So interesting, because he's still got his drive. He's still got his drive-through penalty to serve. As TMA is actually lapped behind, but I don't. Is he going to be able to unlap himself? I'm not sure. As Run Amok goes behind. Hopefully it shouldn't be too long before these cars manage to back up and catch up each other. So we've got Ripley, Greg and Run Amok to catch up the field. TMA looks like, I think he's going to be stuck there, a lap down from the rest of the field. So it doesn't look like the safety car is coming in. I think it's because the pack haven't quite caught up yet. I believe this is the 3rd lap on the safety car. And John B has got a penalty for a collision with SunGod. What has happened there? So both SunGod and John B are penalties. Do any of them have damage? Doesn't quite look like it. Let's see if the AlphaTauri's got damage in his front wing. No, he doesn't. And with that, I think all the cars should be catching up. But I think Ripley has damaged his front wing, so he's coming in to change again. That's another pit stop. If someone in the stream could tell me how many pit stops we've had this race, I mean, I will personally give them a shout out. But Ripley's got to catch the back of the pack, because honestly, I think I'm getting bored being stuck behind the safety car. I have to say. It's not too far back from the safety car, but I think I speak for most of the viewers that I'd certainly like to get back racing at some point soon. Too many, I kind of agree with you. I mean, it's been fairly stop and start so far. It's like watching the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix in real life. But there's so many pit stops. Yeah, I think Ripley should catch up to the back. And there we have it. Safety car is in this lap. In the lead, we have SLR Connor, who hasn't made a pit stop so far, but I think for sure they will be trying to eke the life out of this just so he can get round to the end. Millsy, I think, it will definitely be stopping again. I think he might have another set of softs to take him through. But Millsy is certainly still looking the favourite, but it depends how well SLR Connor does, holding up the McLaren behind him. It's not going to be long, I think, until he drops it. As all the field, everyone's closed up now. You can just see Millsy behind him. Unfortunately, we got the Ferrari ahead of him, so the Ferrari's got to get out of the way quite promptly. And Connor is gone, and already that's built in quite a big buffer indeed. The Ferrari of Millsy, no, the Ferrari of TMA rather, is still in the way as he gets right out of the way of the McLaren. So the chase is certainly on. Prev versus Padge. It looks like the Alfa Romeo is still ahead for now, but still quite close between himself and the Williams. And there's the yellow in Sector 1, and there is APS Greg, who has spun the car. This is proving to be quite a difficult track, I think, for everybody racing. So Greg has gotten himself back underway. Does he have any damage on his car? I'm not sure whether he has. Oh, well, what's happened there to IIRL J? I thought I saw somebody spinning at the back there. I don't know if that was the Ferrari or... Yes, certainly might have been the Ferrari, but Connor and Millsy are fighting each other. And what has happened to Lester O'Connor? Something dramatic, rather, because he's lost the position to Millsy. Is it just lack of it's just like a grip on the tyres? Millsy just breezed past him there. Certainly has the advantage of being on soft tyres versus 10 lap on mediums. It's a slam dunk essentially for Millsy because he's that far ahead. He's got that much life in front of him with SLR Connor, who's got kind of a mountain to climb, it has to be said. I mean, eking these tyres out to get them through to start on the softs is a very, very big ask, I have to say. But behind, it looks like the battle is certainly heating up. There's about a tenth in it between Commence and IIRL J. We're going to go on board with the Alfa Romeo, who are also fighting Sun God behind him, who's on hard compound tyres. Both of these guys are on mediums. That's a good drive the Alfa's got out of the back of turn 2. Oh, and I thought the Mercedes was going to have a run on the AlphaTauri there, so they did well not to hit each other at least. Wiggles right behind this pack, and these 4 cars are separated by about only a second between them. Very, very close racing from about 8th all the way down into 7th. All the way down into 11th, rather. As FRA John B, who's still got his 5-second penalty from his collision with Sun God, is sitting quite well in 7th position. And what has happened to Commence? He's dropped down to P11. He has spun it. Both Mercedes spin it in the space of about 2 laps. Greg's in the pits to change tyres. Run amok is way behind as well, so he must have had a moment himself. And look how quickly Millsy is pulling away. He knows as soft he's got to come in again, but then again, so does SLR Connor. But it's the people behind him he's got to worry about, because those on hards theoretically don't have to stop again. DRS is enabled, and he's just romping away from the Alpine behind, who has got Ryan, the Bullet. Actually, let's go on board with the Bullet, so potential overtaking opportunity. The hards do not have a lot of grip on this game, so it'll be quite hard for him to get... It's quite hard for these guys to actually follow. What's happened to the... in Sector 3, we have TMA retiring from the session, it seems. So we're now down to 14 runners. Commence now into the pits. Oh, and the Bullet, as I say that, has just hit the wall. And as he got damage on the Alfa Romeo, I think, on the Aston Martin rather, I think he might do. But let's stay on board with him, see how well he does. Prev goes wide. There's a fight happening between these 2 cars, and it's John B versus Padge into the next corner, and the Alpine's done him quite quickly there, it has to be said. Yellow's in Sector 3. Greg comes out of the pit. Well, Greg is still there, but it's actually Commence rather is still in the pits, changing his front wing because of the damage that he got. Bullets behind Prev. We also got John B as well behind the Bullet, and Padge still quite in close proximity to FRA John B. The gap between Millsy and SLR Connor is now at 5 seconds. The McLaren really making inroads into his... really building as much time as he can. Particularly, I think it's Ryan, this person, he's really got to worry about, because he should theoretically go to the end on those hard compound tyres. As with Bullet, stays in P5. Thankfully, he doesn't have any damage, it looks like, on that Aston. but drops back by 2/10 after that, after the first corner, which ruins any overtaking chance he has going into turn 3. John B ahead of Padge by 6/10. And it looks like Wiggles has had a moment, but that's why he's fighting with Runamuck behind. And this probably wasn't the best exit, but I'll have DRS, and Runamuck crashes out. And that's another retirement that we've had in the session. And the safety car is back out yet again. What an absolutely bonkers race. We're now down to 13 runners. I have a feeling there's plenty of people that won't want to do this. And Wiggles has got, I think, another drive-through penalty. As for speeding behind the safety car, what's Millsy going to do? Is he going to come into the pit? Yes, he is. I imagine to put on maybe another set of medium tyres. What's SLR Connor going to do? He goes into the pits. Ryan comes into the pits as well. Prev into the pits. The Aston behind into the pits. John B into the pits. Padge, Iros J. Everybody now is coming into the pits. And that resets the order. The McLaren goes out onto mediums. SLR Connor onto hards. Ryan onto mediums. Prev onto mediums. Padge onto mediums. And Ripley stays out on 5-lap-old mediums. Not sure that's probably the best thing to do in hindsight. But it gets him as high as P3 for now. And Wiggles gets another penalty for speeding in the pit lane. As far as penalties goes, this guy really does need to catch a break as they wait to operate on his car. At least the pit stop was somewhat quick. And I'm afraid to say, I mean, with that crash with Runamuck, that's got there's now 6 people now out of this Grand Prix, including the leader Fairley, which has certainly been the shot. Connor had soft selected. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why he went on to why it's showing that he's on hards then. Maybe there's a glitch in the game that hasn't done him well, but it's clearly one for you guys to sort out if you're watching this, Cody's. And another front wing has gone for Sun God. I mean, just coming himself, this is just like... The amount of incidents in this race has been quite, well, insane, it has to say. Which certainly means another pit stop and more than likely more time behind the safety car. As we'll see him without a doubt go into the pits to change his front wing, he does. So let's see what it goes on to. SLR Connor actually goes on to softs, drops him down to 10th. Sun God changes his front wing but goes back onto mediums. Greg comes into the pits and he's changed onto softs. Ah, I feel like I need a break. So there you go. If he had softs there, so probably something in the game has definitely let SLR Connor down. But he's now in 11th. And with Sun God and Greg still to catch up for the field, I wonder whether they're going to get there in time for the safety car to come in at the end of this lap. Doesn't quite look like it. And then we have Ripley actually now up into 2nd place. And that's a very late call, but the safety car is in this lap, as it judges just the right amount of time to catch up to the rest of the field. As we see Millsy, what does he do? He hasn't dropped it yet. He's waiting to drop it now. In fact, he drops it right now, as it gets quite crazy in the midfield. As you see, Prevanel has got a... I don't know whether it's a collision with Ryan there, but it looks like both drivers have been penalised for it. Whether that's right or wrong, it's not particularly fair the way this game works. It penalises both people, even though one person hasn't done anything wrong. But as you see, Wiggles now fighting with John B. Goes round to the outside, but he makes a lovely move down the inside. He's going to make it stick. Not quite. Unfortunately, he has to back out, and that gives the Alpine the position as Commence sits behind him now. SLR Connor is 11th in the other Alpine behind, but he has got a mountain to climb. As Ryan versus Ripley, Ryan overtakes the Aston, whose tyres are 5 laps older than the cars around him. Prevanel versus Iros J. What's going to happen here? It's going to be almost 3 wide into the long left-hander. The drivers back out and know not to. They don't with each other. And what's happened there? Commence has now crashed out. And the VSC... Oh, come on. The safety car is out. Sun God has also retired himself. 2 cars out. The safety car is out yet again. Wiggles now with the drive-through penalty, and so many more penalties to go along with it. John B is now in 8th. SLR Connor now up into 10th. The amount of penalties that we've got and the amount of time behind the safety car in this game has just been mad. So I'm wondering whether they're going to have to go and reduce safety car for the next few races. If we ever go back to Australia again, because this is certainly an absolutely bonkers Australian Grand Prix. Hopefully we shouldn't be too long behind the safety car. Let's go back to tyres. Should help those on the softs at least. They shouldn't have to do so many laps of pace, but you'd rather be out there racing to be able to make up the positions. Next thing I think we're waiting for somebody to crash under the safety car. Somebody do a Roman Grosjean, and that will I think I'll certainly need to lie down after this one, I'll tell you that for free. We're 18 laps into this 29 lap race. We've got incidents up and down and all around the track, and I highly suspect it won't be long before the safety car comes in. We've had 8 people retire from this race, with 11 now remaining. APS Greg is the only one. He's on soft tyres, but he's the only one not in a point scoring position. It comes down to lap 19. Now, both Alpines are 8th and 10th, with Greg behind. I mean, SLR Connor will certainly be the one I think to watch out for, because it'll be on soft, so initially it'll have some pace advantage, but it may just creep away. In fact, it'll definitely creep away come near the end, because we know now with the amount of safety cars we've had, those medium tyres are definitely going to hold on. And with that, I don't think it'll be long before where they announce the safety car will be coming in, because everybody is caught round. There's no reason for this to continue behind the safety car any longer. So it's just going to be, I hope the safety car pulls in quite quickly. Those medium tyres, they're quite hard to warm up, so you've got to keep some life in them. Crazy indeed. I mean, they're dropping like flies out there, fairly, for sure. So that's 11 left, with 10 laps to go after they cross the line. Millsy still has it all to do. He has Ryan behind him, and he's certainly been keeping his head clean. As I think he started from second on the grid, which unfortunately he inherited after AMS Fairley retired from the race. But as we see now, everybody very close, still trying to get as much heat as whatever they can into the tyres. Now, when is Millsy going to drop it in the McLaren? He comes round the final corner, and there he goes. He drops the Cuttle, and that will signal the restart of this next round as Ripley versus Ryan as they come across the line. Ripley is on 5 lap older tyres than the rest of the field, as SLR Connor fights Wiggles behind, and Wiggles now drops back into 10th position. Greg is in 11th and 9 seconds off the back of the 9 tenths rather off the back of the pack, as the two Alpines right together. I don't suspect John B will do Alpine any favours by holding up his teammate, but however, it could be every man for themselves. It could be who knows what rules are going to be happening at the end of coming in at the start of this Grand Prix, as we see the two Alphas fighting each other. Prevanel had a bad exit off the back of I think it was turn 5, and now he falls behind the bullet in the Aston Martin. Padge follows behind in 7th. We have FRR John B in 8th. SLR Connor a 10th behind him in 9th. Are they going to... Surely he's going to play sensible, but the Alpine goes wide. John B goes wide, and Mr. Wiggles hits the back of SLR Connor. Now, does that AlphaTauri have damage? Prev has got a 3-second time penalty for corner cutting. As we see... Oh, what's happened there? Wiggles has crashed, and he's lost his front wing. Quite a bit of debris on the track, but is that enough to throw out a VSC, a virtual safety car? I certainly hope not. But Wiggles now with a front wing to change, surely, unless a safety car is thrown out, can't benefit any further from this race. As SLR Connor now making his way back through the pack, he's got 2 tenths to catch up with Ripley, who is dropping like a stone, it has to be said, on those older medium tyres. As Connor takes Padge. Prevanel has had another moment, and that puts Connor into 5th, does it? Oh, but he's gone very, very wide, and that hands the position back to Padge. And now we got Ripley and FRA John B back on Connor's tail. And Connor has got a 3-second penalty for multiple track warnings. He's right behind Padge now. He looks like he's made the move stick, and yes, he has done. Padge gets out of the way. And look. Oh, and it's so close. From about 5th all the way down to 10th. It is virtually nose to tail. Now, is the Alpine of John B going to make a move against Ripley, who has got it all to do? DRS has now been enabled, and Ripley is spun. On the back of the final corner, Ripley drops down to 10th. The tyres seem to be giving up on him. Surprised he made it that far, but I have to say, Son God, you were doing very, very well that time, mate. So it's take the positives. Oh, and a contact between SLR Connor and Prevenel, which means Connor has now got damage to his front wing. That means the Alpine's charge has been halted. Paddington's doing everything he can, trying not to make contact with that Alpine, but you don't know where to look this race. And yellow's in Sector 2 because Prevenel has lost his front wing. What is happening? Padge now spins as well. What is happening here? I literally have no idea just what on earth is going on right now, because there are incidents up and down the track like nobody's business. SLR Connor still defending from his teammate, but he's got damage on his front wing. And that should give John B the DRS and chance to overtake, and surely he should have the move done. I don't think his teammate will be fighting him too much for that. But my goodness, this is such a crazy old race, and looks like, yes, Padge has got a puncture. Thank you, well spotted there, Son God. Thank you for letting me know that. Padge has got a rear left puncture rather, on his car as Ryan falls down to IIRL J. What's happened to Padge? It looks like he's spun yet again. As Connor stays out, so he's not going to be changing his tyres, but there's kind of cause for him to do it because he's still 10 seconds ahead of Ripley. Prevenel comes into the pits. Padge, I imagine, will be into the pits as well. Prev actually retires, so that is the 9th retirement so far in this round. And my goodness, guys, this has been one of the craziest races that I've ever seen, as Padge still tries desperately to get back to the pits. But he's still, unfortunately, the rear left is not agreeing with him at all. He's trying to steer the car around. He's trying to get through, but he has got to stay out of the leader's ways here because Millsy is coming round, and Padge well does stay out of the leader's way, so very sensible from him. And Wiggles now overtakes Padge, and Millsy is 2.5 seconds ahead of IIRL J, with Ryan in 3rd, the Bullet in 4th, and John B in 5th position. Greg is in 6th position. 7th behind him is SLR Connor, who is still holding on, and Ripley's not exactly making inroads into him, so it looks like it's working in his favour. John looks like behind the Bullet is behind Ryan, still making his way through there. And what's happening here? IIRL J hasn't got the DRS, so it's just a case of how quickly Ryan can catch up to him. SLR Connor, in fact, does come into the pits to put on, to change tyres and put on a new front wing. So that's going to send him, he's only going to lose 1 position from it. So in theory, he may be able to catch, Ripley if he absolutely sends it. But it's going to be a crazy one indeed. And Padge desperately trying to get that car into the pits. I imagine it will be a quick retirement, I must say, because there's not really much else I think he can gain, apart from simply just staying out and scraping 1 point. But a point's still a point. Anything can still happen. Ryan now gets a 3-second penalty for multiple track warnings. The Bullet has got DRS on the Haas, so unless Ryan can make some inroads into IIRL J, but he's within a second, so he should have protection somewhat from what Bullet can do. As FRA John B still lays behind in 5th position. 6th place behind him is Greg, who was on soft tyres, but with 8 laps old, they may start to go off at some point. Connor and Wiggles and Padge still ahead. Padge comes out of the pits. Let's go on board with the Bullet, and Ryan, I don't think has had the best exit, but it looks like he had just enough to defend. Yes, he will, because the Bullet is way too far back with to essentially the double DRS. With Millsy still way out in front, IIRL J is in 2nd position, quite comfortably in the Alfa Romeo. There's yellows in Sector 1, and I believe that's Ripley, who spun yet again. And that is going to help SLR Connor get another few more points. The Alpine is just coming up to the next, coming up to turn 3 actually. He's just gone through turn 2, so he's about 6 seconds now behind. And with those overheated tyres, it won't be long before he's right on the back. It's before SLR Connor's right up his chuff. Australia is definitely a tricky one, I often find, particularly if it's quite low speed. It's quite tricky to try and get out of the way. And what's happened, I think maybe that just might have been Padge actually trying to stay out of the way, as Ryan has got DRS on IIRL J. He's 3/10 behind now. Can the Haas make a move, come up to turn 3? This is where it makes all the difference, and that's quite a decent exit, but a nice twitch of oversteer somewhat. Is he going to make the move? What's he going to do? No, he's going to stay behind. Oh, and he's... was that contact between Bullet and Ryan? It looks like that might have been. Has the Aston got damage? Mario comes and left some bananas. It certainly feels like that way. He left bananas all over the grip surface of the road. But that has pushed the field out. SLR Connor does the fastest lap of the race with 22.9, which actually isn't too far off from qualifying pace by about a second. But with no DRS, that's quite a strong time nonetheless. Wiggles has got another time penalty for multiple track warnings. Ryan and the Bullet are going to have DRS. Let's go to the penalties actually, just to see who's got what. Ryan has got 8 seconds, so he's not going to hang on to third position. In fact, he may actually fall down to 5th. John B has got 3 seconds worth of penalties, so Greg has got to stay within 3 seconds there. SLR Connor's got 3 seconds. Wiggles has got 14 seconds of penalties, but what happens, I think he'll stay in 9th place. As we'll stay on board with Ryan and the Bullet. This looks to be the closest battle so far. Quite an aggressive entry into that corner. 3 laps to go. What's going to happen between 2nd, 3rd and 4th? John B is sitting quite pretty in 5th. As long as he's ahead of 3 seconds from APS Greg, so should just about hang on to that time. And what's happened to Wiggles? He's serving his penalty and more than likely going for fastest lap. He's a lap down now on the pack. It's 4/10, but it's 4/10 apiece between IIRL J, Ryan and the Bullet. But now the Haas is very, very close. Has he got overtake on? No, he hasn't. It comes down to the left-hander and then through onto the right. We have yellows in Sector 2. So what's happened there? Is it Padge that's gone well? Yes, it is Padge. This is certainly a tricky, tricky race for those indeed. But hopefully we can get through to the end of the race with some clean on-track action. Hopefully there'll be no more contact or no more spins or whatever between these guys, as this is a very close opportunity for Ryan to come behind with IIRL J. He's got DRS activated. He'll save, I think, his overtake and whatever, coming on down to the straights between turn 3. That's a wide entry there for IIRL J. Has the Haas got enough chance to make an overtake work? He deployed a little bit of overtake. This is the penultimate lap. So if he's going to make the move, he's going to have to do it very, very quickly. SLR Connor passes Ripley. And it looks like Mr. Wiggles obviously coming into the pits. He'll be looking to set the fastest lap to at least gain 1 extra point. He'll have nothing to lose. He won't not score any points by pitting, because we had 9 retirees. And SLR Connor does the fastest lap. Now Wiggles has got to beat it. Can he beat it? Now that wasn't the best exit for Ryan, which means that IIRL J should be able to defend his position quite well. But as long as he can stay with them, there's yellows in Sector 1, so that might be Padge just getting out of the way of these guys. Millsy is holding the lead quite comfortable. I think in terms of driver of the day, it's a very hard one to call. I think I'll have to give it to Millsy to some degree, because while everything's been going around holding him, he's certainly been holding his nerve. But the same as IIRL J, I suppose on the qualifying pace kind of decides it in a way. Now this is the Bullet's best chance possibly to overtake Ryan, but he's got DRS from the Alfa Romeo. So can everyone make any overtakes work? It's the last lap, so I don't think. And the Haas looses the back end somewhat, so the Aston's right along with him. But unfortunately, the dirty air is so bad, it's not enough for the Aston to stay with him. Now this is the last point in the lap where they could do a potential overtake, as long as Ryan holds on, but he's nearly 7/10 back now, so I don't think that's going to work, as John B gets another 3-second penalty, but that's kind of a redundant penalty because he's 6 seconds ahead of Greg anyway, so he'll hold on to 5th. And no, it doesn't look like an overtake is going to be done there, so we are going to go on board with the leader of this race, Millsy, who started on P2 and stayed with his teammate until he crashed out. He's one who's really kept his head under what has been a very topsy-turvy race. What an absolutely phenomenal drive by Millsy. He was helped by mistakes from his teammate, but he comes across to take his 2nd win in a row. And that was a brilliant drive, I must be said, for the McLaren. Unfortunately, Ryan loses 3rd position to the Bullet, who takes the podium. John B comes across the line in 5th. Greg comes across the line to take 6th position. So far, Connor has the fastest lap, but I'm not sure if Wiggles is going to be able to take it back from him. But he's obviously a lap down. But nevertheless, still the topsy-turvy one. So there we go. SLR Connor takes 7th position. And from that with the... and Ripley spins. And I was going to happen at some point. But the good thing is he's a lap. Whatever happens, he's going to be finishing 8th as soon as he comes across the line. And there we have it. So with that, with Songol keeping an eye on the time. So the gap at the top of the championship has been reduced from 73 points to 65, with John ahead of Ross. So John B still leads, with John B getting driver of the day as far as what the game decides. But as I'm the streamer, I'll decide who driver of the day is. Thank you very much. What a classy drive from Millsy to take the lead. I think I'm probably going to have to give driver of the day to him for just simply keeping his head under what was very tricky conditions, it has to be said. So with that, guys, I think we'll certainly be wrapping up the stream from there. It's certainly been a bonkers Australian Grand Prix, certainly a crazy time down under. So for those of you who just joined the stream to watch, thank you all so much for your time. I hope you've really enjoyed this stream. And for those of you, if you're new, then why not hit that follow button for the IIRL Racing League. Thank you once again for getting us over 200 followers. It's certainly been massive help for us, and we only hope that those numbers grow. So with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up the stream there. Thank you all so much for watching, and do join us on Sunday for the 82 race, and hopefully I'll try not to bin it like I did in Brazil. Thank you all so much for watching, and with that, I will see you guys on the next stream.